Today, I'm going to be testing out different kinds of markers to see if you can use them to color on clay. I was sent these two sets of markers by the lovely Ohuhu to see if they would work on coloring clay. And I gotta tell you, when I was asked to use them on clay, I was skeptical for sure. I'm going to be using Sculpey polymer clay for this experiment, but before we even start the sculpting process, I'm going to test swatch all of the colors so we can get a better sense of what colors we have to work with. You have to shake the pens to get them started since they're paint pens. But these pens are so fun. I didn't realize they had sent me paint pens, which makes a lot of sense looking back now, but these colors are so pretty and so vibrant. There's actually a lot to work with even in this smaller set. First things I'd like to say about these pens are that they're very beginner friendly. I've used paint pens a few times before, but they're hard to open, dry out easily, and leave paint blobs if you press too hard. These pens have literally none of those issues. You just have to shake them to get them started and you get a nice layer of paint flowing. Now that we have all the colors laid out for us, it's time to start thinking of what we want to sculpt. I decided I wanted to use all white for this project so it would be like a blank paper, but these pens come out pretty thick so I think they would go over other colors pretty easily. With these colors, I decided to make a little plant pot so that we could use those nice terracotta-y and green colors. I made him into a little succulent with some flowers on the leaves for a little bit of extra color and then baked him in my clay oven, which I'm leaving a link to below if you want to check that out. Now, it's finally time for the moment we've all been waiting for. Do these pens work on clay? And, yeah, they do. I was shocked. They work so well that I had to include my real-time reaction in here because they work so well. Wow. Wait, that's so good. I was shocked to say the least. I told you earlier that I was skeptical, and I truly did not think that they would work as well as they did. I've tried using alcohol ink markers on clay before, and let's just say it does not turn out looking amazing. But these, and I know that they're paint pens, so they were more likely to work, but this just made my life so much easier. I can fix little details super easily with these and the little thin tips that they have, and they only require one, that is one layer of paint right there. And it matches the marker, fairly, I'm glad I did the swatch, but, look how easily that fixes those little, overlap there. It's going over a darker color so easily. Then I moved on to the green leaves, which was really fun. It was a bit more of a challenge to get into all those tiny little places, but this method totally works for painting clay sculptures. I'm going to leave my code down below if you want to get yourself a set of these markers. I definitely recommend, especially if you usually paint your clay charms or sculptures. Coloring books have been super popular again lately, especially with that comfy art style. But you could do that in 3D and anything you could think of. I'm personally thinking of using these markers on some Minecraft characters because I usually have to paint those anyway, so it might be super easy with these. Here's me sitting and painting these for a little bit better size reference. These definitely weren't the biggest sculptures I've ever done, so being able to use these pens for really small details is really important since most of my work is really small. The first layer came out like this, so again, it looks great with one layer, but I decided to go back and add a darker color to give it some more depth on these leaves. And then I went and I started coloring all of the flowers. I went with pink because I usually think of succulents and cactuses having pink flowers, and I also thought, that's a good contrast to that green there. And then the hard part. I had to add the tiny face, which, it turned out pretty good for a thick pen on a super tiny charm, and I colored its feet a darker brown just to give it so they would stand out, So this is how the first sculpture turned out. Then it was time to test out the second set of markers I was sent, and these are very similar. They're acrylic pens again, but this time you don't need to shake them. So I think that these are probably their most user-friendly set of, quote, paint pens that they have. I was really happy with how that last figure turned out, so this time I went with something a little bit more complicated, a fairy cow. And something I really love about these pens is that you could see here, the bottom of this figure burnt a little bit in the oven, but I was able to just go over those burn marks with the white pen and it looks like it was never even burnt at all. These pens are also awesome. Again, I was so happy with how they felt on the clay, but here are some of my thoughts. They're definitely a bit more translucent than the other acrylic pens, so sometimes I did have to go over the layers twice, but there's a huge range of colors on these ones, so there's a lot more options that are possible with these. They also have two sides, a brush side that I'm using on this, and then a typical paint pen side, which I thought was really cool. These also had a little bit finer of a tip, I think, so it was easier getting in all of those cracks and things with these. I'm going in with the black here to add all of the details like the hooves and the spots on this cutie. My favorite part is being able to add so many details like sparkles and spots and things because you can just keep adding layers. There's no stacking here. I used a lighter pink for the nose, which it was looking pretty empty before. I think this nose really brought it together. It started looking super cute here. And then I used this flesh tone for the horns. Here's how it turned out. I thought the eyes looked a little bit dead before, but after I put the white, it's a little scary. But you know what? I think other than that, it turned out super cute. Those wings are so cute. I was able to add a bunch of details with these pens, and look at the range of colors. It's super bright, and here it is. It doesn't even need to be glazed because the paint stays on the clay so well. So here's both of them together. I thought that was such a fun experience, so thank you so much, Ohuhu, for sponsoring this video. Bye, guys!